Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. At some point or other, we all experienced our parents telling us they don't have a favorite, but everybody knows that the child whose name is the password to the Wi-Fi is the one they would actually take a bullet for. In my case, my parents don't even try to hide who their favorite child is. And though they deny it when I claim it or ask them straightforwardly, they pay more attention to him, his studies, his friends, and his life, a whole lot more than they ever did to mine. For the most part, my relationship with my brother is peaceful, and though my emotions of jealousy and feelings of exclusion are very strong and obvious, I never let them influence my relationship with him, nor do I complain about it too much to my parents, which is something I pride myself for, seeing how inconsiderate they are towards me. There's also that thing parents do, where the mother favors the son and the dad favors the daughter. And this seems to be very common in pretty much every household except for mine, obviously, because my dad would sacrifice his soul to the devil for my brother. Whatever, moving on, so I don't seem very salty. But I want you to keep in mind that my exclusion has always been something that everybody just knows and accepts and lives with. 3 years ago, my brother started dating my childhood best friend, and by that, I don't mean the person I'm still friends with, but the person I was really close to when I was a child. And although our relationship fell apart as we grew, her kind nature and prominent similarities ensured that we immediately picked back up where we left off, and we were soon becoming close friends instead of her being somebody that my brother was dating. Only thing that annoyed me was that my parents were growing aware of the development in my brother and his girlfriend's relationship and how serious they were about one another. They started excluding me and treating her more of a daughter than they ever considered me, and I was literally their birth child. So, I was once again left with no other choice but to be annoyed out of my mind and feel left out, the story of my life summarized in a single expression. It was almost as if my parents had it for me, like it took the bare minimum for them to turn their backs on me and favor other people over me. Not sure if that's because I came at the wrong time or they were expecting a boy and they're simply sexist. But it has become a routine for them to latch onto whatever person comes into their life and prioritize and love them more than me. I could safely say that one of the few good things my parents have ever done for me was that my dad paid for a car that I wanted to purchase when I was 19 years old, which is basically 2 or 3 years ago. But don't kid yourselves, because this is going to turn back around and bite me in the ace. What happened was that my dad came up to me one day asking me for some money, saying that it was extremely urgent and that he wouldn't have been asking me if he had any other way of making it so quickly. I obviously refused at first, for many reasons, one of them being he is the parent and shouldn't be asking me for money when I'm at a period in my life in which I need financial support and help, and shouldn't be giving it. The other being that I actually didn't have the money he was asking for and had no way of making it as well. And the other thing was that he refused to tell me what this urgent thing that he needed a large amount of money was for. He absolutely refused to tell me no matter what, how much I pressured him, or begged, or kindly requested that he tell me. When I stopped pressuring him to tell me what he needed the money for, he started pressuring me to find whatever way possible to give him the money back. And when I say money back, I mean that he was insinuating that he gave me money to buy the car, and therefore I should feel grateful, and that gratitude should push me to give him money or find a way to make it and hand it over to him to return what he considered a favor and not his duty towards his younger child. It barely took me 1 week from when he asked me and the time that I felt there was no other choice but for me to sell my car and give him the money. That's how thirsty I was for his validation and acceptance, and how strong his grip and manipulative tactics were over me. I didn't even sell the car myself, I had him sell it, so he would know that by doing that he would be leaving me with absolutely nothing, and that I wouldn't be left without a damn dime in my pockets to use for transportation or get another vehicle. Without even giving me a proper thank you or a hug of appreciation, he just took the money and ran with it. 2 months after that, I was invited to my brother's house by his wife and was shown to a room the moment I got there. It was painted a baby pink and scattered with toys and animal drawings, etc. In simpler words, my brother and his wife were having a baby, and they invited me over to their house so they could show me their newborn's nursery room. For a moment, I was overrushed with a plethora of feelings, joy being one of them, and jealousy and sadness being the other, considering that it reminded me of how my parents would have probably never done the same for me, seeing as how much they seemed to dislike me for no apparent reason. My momentary bubble of emotions popped when my brother patted me on the back and told me that this was all by the grace of my father's generosity. When I looked confused and puzzled, he explained to me that Dad was the one who took care of equipping this entire room with everything in it. It was a gift from my dad to help fund my brother's wife's pregnancy, which he used the money that he got from selling my car to actually fund. I told my brother that this wasn't the grace and generosity of my father, and instead the money that he got from selling my car, after claiming it was something extremely urgent and possibly even life-threatening. I tried keeping calm and collected demeanor when I was with them, but when I tell you the moment I got home, I collapsed and fell apart because nothing about anything that had ever happened with my family made me feel welcome or loved or appreciated by my parents. My brother and wife were nice enough to ask me to go see their child's nursery, but my father had lied to me to fund it and pretend like it was a gift from him instead of the result of selling something that meant a lot for me, and I needed more than they needed a nursery. There's this urge within me that's nagging at me, telling me to pack up my shit and move out of this town and never talk to either one of my parents ever again, because I'm really sick and tired of going through the same loop and having my mental health and stability jeopardized because my parents can't get over their sick favoritism. Update. After my last post that went up last week, my father came to visit me a couple of days after, and I thought it could be some orchestrated surprise in which he would confess to me what he used the money for and thank me properly for giving away a necessity of mine so he could give someone a gift. Instead, he came over asking me if I had more money because he still needed more. And when I told him I knew what he used the money for, and I thought it was a really disgustingly low blow, even despite how obvious it was that my emotions were never taken into consideration when doing this, and how obvious it was that he and my mom favors my brother so obviously and shamelessly that he would sell my car to make him and his wife mildly content, he was so offended and pissed off that I had the audacity to go sniffing around what he used the money for. He thought I was being childish and even immature to feel jealous of my brother, who was expecting a child himself. He told me to grow up and grow a pair and stop acting so selfish and see the bigger picture, and whatever type of shit he used to tell me to gaslight, throwing my emotions out the window and minimizing the situation to stupefy me. I was having none of it, and I asked him to get out of my house. He got even more offended that I was kicking him out of my apartment. So I picked up my backpack and got out the door, leaving the apartment and everything within it to him instead. I'm so sick and tired of dealing with his shit that I genuinely don't see an escape from this situation other than getting out of town and never talking to him again, or at least for a few years, just so he could realize the gravity of what he had been causing me and the emotional distress that I've been living my entire life. Next story. So my 20 female, mother 52 female, is not keen on getting the COVID vaccine. I've been arguing with her for the past year, and she's always coming up with new excuses. I've been dealing with dermatitis for my whole life. This past summer, it got really bad, worse than ever before. I was in absolute agony for 3 months. My mother started dropping hints that she thinks the COVID vaccine, got the second shot in July, is at fault. I told her to stop talking crap. In November, after my dermatitis was treated and back to normal, it spread to my scalp. My body was fine, but my scalp was red and sore. I started losing hair rapidly. I was in a lot of stress because I loved my hair. My dermatologist gave me a prescription for a wig. However, I wasn't ready to shave my remaining hair off. I went home for Christmas and my mom started joking that I would be bald soon. I felt ridiculed. She also said that she thinks it's the vaccine's fault. I told her again to stop this nonsense. My brother, whom I hadn't told yet, also noticed my thinning hair. I didn't tell anyone though, and I don't think my grandparents noticed. Last week, I finally had the guts to cut my hair off and go to a wig store. I made the mistake and told my mother. On New Year's Eve, she called me to ask if I was bald yet. I hung up on her as I was hosting dinner. The next day, I received a text message from an aunt whom I haven't seen in 3 years. She told me not to worry about losing my hair as hers was also falling out. Mind you, she's in her 60s, and she asked me which brand of COVID vaccine I got. I've had enough. I instantly blocked her number and called my mother. I yelled her to stop spreading my medical information. She said it wasn't a big deal as the family would have noticed anyway. I told her that this isn't my aunt's or anyone else's business and that I would cease contact with my mother if this didn't stop. She didn't even listen, only replied, yeah, and started talking about New Year's Eve. I hung up on her. I felt so disrespected, but maybe I went too far. Am I the a-hole for blowing up at her? Not the a-hole. Your mother overstepped. She ridiculed you on multiple occasions and made light of something that can be upsetting for many people at any age, much less at 20 years old. all while pushing an agenda that you do not agree with. You would be justified in not speaking to her again, but I would encourage you to remember that all people are flawed and to tell her one last time how you feel and give her the opportunity to apologize and change before you cut her out of your life. Not for her, but for you. I'm sorry about your hair loss. Not the a-hole. Your mother is overstepping. I'm not even going to start ranting about how she's using you to support her anti-vax narrative. However, it's rather unsettling how she's using your medical issues to ridicule you, almost in a ahaha, I got it better than you. Honestly, I would start by putting her in a no-contact timeout. She needs to realize she can't be damaging your psyche like she is, which is probably aggravating your stress and therefore your health issues. I'm so sorry for your health problem. I hope in the future, with less stress from your mom, you're able to heal. Not the a-hole, and I would seriously consider cutting off your mother until she apologizes, if she were to. It's clear she has no boundaries when it comes to you and is also fine with making cruel and hurtful jokes at your expense. Between the hurtful jokes and the harm she could cause by spreading misinformation about the vaccine, she sounds toxic as hell. Next story. I'm transferring to a college outside my country to finish my degree. It's a great opportunity and one that I never doubted I would take, even if I was in a committed relationship. Well, I'm in a relationship and I love my boyfriend dearly, and we're going to try long distance since we can divide like 5 visits to each other between the two of us. Plus, he's studying to get his second degree while working and developing a new company. So I told this to my family at a New Year's Eve dinner since they asked, and my cousin, 33 female, started trashing my decision, telling me that I must not love my boyfriend since I'm choosing college abroad over him, and a bunch of other stuff. At some point, I didn't even acknowledge what she was saying, and this got her angry and said how much I would regret it in the future, that my long-term relationship should be my priority and I will regret ruining it. I just looked at her and said, like you regret sacrificing having children because your husband didn't want them and now you go around weeping when a family member has a baby? Well, that was pretty self-explanatory of her situation. She always wanted children and she gave that up to be with her husband, and now she suffers deeply every time someone in the family has a baby. She doesn't treat them badly, but it is equally annoying how she asks to meet the child just to start crying anytime she picks him or her up, ends up making it about her and her great sacrifice for love. Anyhow, she got pretty mad, said that I had no idea what true love is and that you reach compromises when you do meet someone you truly love. I just answered that you shouldn't give up your long-term dreams and hopes for the future for someone, and that she was naive because she got in a relationship with her now husband even after knowing he wanted no kids. She thought she could convince him. I told her true love doesn't stick around, so you can change your personal goals or beliefs. Long story short, the family is divided since I just defended myself, but I knew that was a sore spot for her. But I was just done with her talking shit about me for choosing my education as my priority. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Choosing to finish your degree in another country isn't choosing your degree, education, and future employment over your boyfriend. Plenty of couples go through a temporary long distance for educational reasons, and while not every couple survives that, those who do have made a great investment into their joint future. If your relationship doesn't make it, fingers crossed that's not the case. At least you got a great opportunity and groundwork towards your future out of the time apart. Your cousin seems to regret choosing her husband over her desire to have children, and she's projecting that feeling onto you to validate her own decision. Not the a-hole. Do not sacrifice your education, job, better opportunity, and yes, like you said, long-term dreams for the sake of other people. If they love and care about you, they will support you. It seems like your cousin has her own wound, but it's not right for her to bleed on other people because she refuses to heal her wound. Go get your dream, OP. Next story. I, 57 female, absolutely despise my mother-in-law, 95 female. She's cruel and ungrateful and made me break down in front of my 3 children several times now over the years. I've been begging my children, they're adults now, to put her in a home, but they kept refusing to because they're concerned that they won't properly care and watch over her, and her life might be at risk. Now my mother-in-law is ungrateful to me whenever I make her meals. She accuses me of stealing from her or trying to harm her, and makes life miserable for me at home. She has always lived with us, so she does not have anywhere else to go. Even my husband despises her now, but he can somehow handle her better than I can. Nevertheless, we usually have shouting matches at our house. The other day, my mother-in-law accused me of poisoning her food, so I finally had it and shouted at her that if she hates my cooking so much that she can go home and we won't have to care for her anymore. Mother-in-law retorts and says, "That's fine, no one cares about me." So then I broke down and bawled. My daughter, who still lives with us, 19 female, runs down the stairs and starts shouting at both of us to stop and claims that we're driving her to a breaking point. I then yell at her that if she cares about our grandmother so much that she may as well send me to a home, and ask her if she even cares about me anymore. She then runs back upstairs and screams. I honestly wonder if I may have gone too far, but I just feel everyone in this household just doesn't care or understand how I feel. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. First of all, aggressiveness can come from dementia, and at 95, I would say it's likely. Also, you just said something horrible to your daughter, really horrible and self-centered. I don't think your daughter would care about you anymore. After putting up with you, putting up so much responsibility on her and not caring about her mental health. You're the a-hole big time. Why can't you put your mother-in-law in a home? That's not on your kids, that's on you. If your youngest is 19, doubt that your other kids are much older. None of your children is financially able to put your mother-in-law into a home. You need to get therapy for you and your mother-in-law. You've created an extremely toxic environment for your children. It needs to be fixed. Talk to your mother-in-law and husband, figure something out and put her in a home. You're the a-hole. She's 95 years old. For F's sake. And it sounds like she has dementia. Put her in a home with an Alzheimer's ward so someone who knows how to take care for people with dementia can look after her needs. For F's sake, call social services if you don't know where to start. Jesus effing Christ. Look, I get it. My grandma has Alzheimer's and I've raised toddlers. It wears you down to your absolute last nerve dealing with them, and you really do stop being able to think rationally after a while. So stop doing it, reclaim your sanity and your life.